My parents made me sleep in the basement while my brother lived like a king, telling everyone I was mentally unstable. When they lost everything and showed up at my door crying, I reminded them the basement is where crazy people belong. Hey everyone, before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but recent events have made me realize how many others might have gone through something similar. Maybe writing this will help someone else recognize what's happening to them before it's too late. It started when I was 13. I remember the exact moment, because it was during my middle school graduation dinner. My younger brother Connor had just finished telling everyone about making the junior baseball team, and my mom turned to me with this weird smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Santiago, sweetie, we need to talk about your room situation," she said, cutting into her salmon like she was about to discuss the weather. "Your father and I have been thinking the basement would be perfect for you. You need your own space to focus on your studies, away from distraction." I remember staring at my plate, fork frozen halfway to my mouth. The basement. Our basement was unfinished, with concrete floors and those fluorescent lights that buzz constantly. Sure, there was a small bathroom down there, but it was mainly used for storage and laundry. "But my room is fine," I said, glancing at Connor, who was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. "It's already decided," my father interrupted, not looking up from his phone. "We're converting Connor's playroom into his new bedroom, and he's taking your room. The basement will be good for you. You've been different lately, more withdrawn. This will give you space to sort yourself out." Different. I wasn't different. I was just quieter than Connor, more focused on my studies than sports. But that dinner marked the beginning of what I now recognize as a systematic campaign to paint me as the troubled child while elevating Connor to golden child status. The basement renovation consisted of throwing down some old carpet samples, adding a secondhand bed, and installing a cheap desk from Walmart. Meanwhile, Connor's new setup included a full gaming system, a new computer for schoolwork, and fresh paint in his chosen color. My parents spent weeks making his space perfect while I carried my belongings down cold, concrete stairs. The narrative about my mental instability began subtly. It started with concerned looks when I'd question things, whispered conversations that would stop when I entered a room. Then came the comments to relatives, "Santiago's going through a phase," or "We're giving him space to work through his issues." What issues? I maintained straight A's, never got in trouble, and had a small but solid group of friends. But somehow, every achievement was twisted. Got perfect scores? He's obsessing over grades to avoid social interaction. Spent time reading? He's isolating himself again. Meanwhile, Connor's C+ in math was celebrated because at least he's well-rounded and sports are his real passion. The basement itself became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The humidity made my books curl at the edges. The constant whir of the washing machine became my white noise. During thunderstorms, I'd lie awake listening to water trickle through the foundation, wondering if this time the basement would flood. It never did, but the fear was there, along with the spiders and the occasional mouse that would skitter past my bed. My parents started using my basement dwelling as evidence of my supposed instability. "See how he prefers to be alone down there," they'd tell concerned teachers or friends' parents. They conveniently left out that it was their decision, not mine. When relatives visited, they'd say I was resting or studying rather than invite me up to join family gatherings. The contrast with Connor's treatment became increasingly stark. Family photos began featuring him prominently, while I was either absent or barely visible at the edges. Christmas mornings meant Connor opening piles of gifts upstairs, while I received practical items like school supplies or new sheets from my basement bed. Every sports game, every school event, every family dinner became the Connor show, with me as the shadowy supporting character who might act out at any moment. I learned to adapt. The basement became my fortress. I threw myself into academics with an intensity that probably did look obsessive from the outside, but what choice did I have? My grades were my ticket out. While Connor was being driven to baseball practice in our parents' new SUV, I was mapping out college applications and scholarship essays by the dim light of those humming fluorescent tubes. The turning point came during my junior year of high school. I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt, fabricating stories about my episodes and concerning behavior. She described outbursts that never happened, incidents of aggression that were pure fiction. That's when I realized this wasn't just favoritism or poor parenting. This was deliberate character assassination. That night, lying in my basement bed, listening to Connor's muffled victory celebration after another baseball game, they'd installed extra insulation in his floor, my ceiling, to dampen the noise. I made a decision. I would play their game, but on my terms. I became the quiet, studious son they claimed I was, but with a purpose. Every hour in that basement was an hour closer to freedom. By senior year, I had a full ride to a prestigious university on the other coast. The day I told them, my mother's face did that thing again. That smile that wasn't a smile. "Are you sure you can handle being so far from home with your condition?" I just nodded and went back to my basement. Let them think what they wanted. I had an escape plan, and nothing they could say would stop me. I remember packing my bags that last summer, Connor lounging in the doorway of my basement room. "You know they only did all this because they care about you, right?" he said, gesturing vaguely at my space. "They wanted to help you get better." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw what our parents had created. A golden child who truly believed their lies, who would probably spend his whole life believing them. In that moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But that's getting ahead of the story. The real karma wouldn't come until years later, when everything they built came crashing down around them. But that's a story for another post. Update. College was different. The first night in my dorm room, I couldn't sleep because it was too quiet. No humming fluorescent lights, no washing machine, no water trickling through foundation cracks. My roommate probably thought I was crazy, sitting up at 3 a.m. with my desk lamp on, just staring at the ceiling. Old habits die hard, I guess. The first year was rough, not gonna lie. Freedom feels strange when you're not used to it. I kept waiting for someone to tell me I was acting weird, or suggest I needed space to sort myself out. But that never came. Instead, I had professors who praised my work ethic, classmates who actually wanted to hang out, and for the first time, space that was truly mine. I limited contact with my family to brief phone calls, mostly with my mother. Every conversation followed the same script: Connor's latest achievements, vague concerns about my stability, and subtle hints that I should consider transferring to a school closer to home, where we can keep an eye on you. I learned to let her words wash over me like those basement water leaks, acknowledged but contained. During my sophomore year, I met Gabriella in my advanced programming class. She caught me muttering to myself while debugging a particularly nasty piece of code, and instead of backing away slowly like most people would, she pulled up a chair and started helping me find the error. That was the first time someone had really seen me, not as the basement dweller, not as the unstable one, just as me. Our relationship grew slowly, built on late-night coding sessions and coffee runs. When I finally told her about my family, it was almost by accident. We were at her apartment, and she asked why I never talked about home. The whole story came spilling out, and I waited for that look, the one I'd seen so many times before, the mix of pity and discomfort. Instead, she got angry. Not at me, but for me. "That's not parenting," she said, her hands curled around a coffee mug. "That's psychological abuse." Hearing someone else name it, abuse, hit me harder than I expected. I'd started seeing a therapist by then, Allison, who's become both a counselor and friend, but I'd never used that word myself. It felt too heavy, too dramatic for what I'd experienced. But Gabriella was right. Meanwhile, life back home continued its predictable pattern. Connor had dropped out of college to focus on his prospects in minor league baseball and moved back home. My parents, ever supportive, bought him a new car to help him get to practices. They'd also started some kind of luxury home goods business, riding the wave of Instagram influencer culture. Every time I checked social media, there were new posts about their family business, featuring Connor as the face of the brand. I graduated summa cum laude and landed a job at a major tech company in Seattle. My parents didn't come to the graduation. Connor had an important game that day, they said. I told them I understood, and I did. It was just one more confirmation that I'd made the right choice in building my own life. The next few years passed in a blur of career advancement, therapy sessions, and building a real life with Gabriella. We got married in a small ceremony. My parents weren't invited. Connor sent a text saying, "Congrats, bro," 3 days later. I bought a house, the kind with big windows and open spaces, no basement. Then came the Instagram posts. At first they were subtle. My mother posting about challenges in the family business and asking followers to support their small business journey. Then Connor started sharing photos of himself at various odd jobs, his captions full of hustle culture buzzwords. The golden child was tarnishing. But they were still keeping up appearances. I might have missed the real story if it wasn't for Allison. During one of our sessions, she mentioned seeing a local news article about a luxury goods business being investigated for fraud. I didn't make the connection until she showed me the article. There were my parents' names, right in the headline. It turned out their successful family business had been running on smoke and mirrors. They'd been taking pre-orders for luxury items they couldn't deliver, using the money to maintain their lifestyle and support Connor's fading baseball dreams. The whole thing was a house of cards, and it was starting to collapse. I showed the article to Gabriella that night. She looked at me over her laptop, her face serious. "They're going to come to you for help," she said. "You know that, right?" I did know, just like I knew exactly what I was going to say when they did. But that story, the day they showed up at my door with their perfect facade finally cracked, that's for the final update. And trust me, it's worth the wait. Final update. It happened on a Sunday morning. Gabriella and I were having coffee on our deck, enjoying the view of the Seattle skyline, when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Connor had been trying to reach me for hours, sending increasingly desperate messages about a family emergency. I showed the messages to Gabriella. She just raised an eyebrow and said, "Took them longer than I expected." The doorbell rang at 11:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just checked my watch, wondering if I should start prepping lunch. Through our security camera, I could see them. my parents looking nothing like their polished Instagram photos, and Connor wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. I took my time walking to the door. Years of therapy with Allison had prepared me for this moment, but the reality of it still felt surreal. When I opened the door, the first thing that hit me was how small they looked. My father, once so intimidating, seemed to have shrunk. My mother's carefully maintained appearance was showing cracks. Connor just looked lost. "Santiago, son," my father started, his voice lacking its usual authority. "We need your help." I stood in the doorway, not inviting them in. "The basement is where you need help." The words came out calmer than I expected. My mother's face crumpled. "Please, we've lost everything. The business. There were complications. We didn't mean for it to get so out of hand." "Complications?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You mean the fraud charges? The investors you scammed? Or maybe the fake reviews and non-existent products?" Connor stepped forward. "Bro, come on, we're family. We wouldn't be here if we had anywhere else to go." "Family?" I pulled out my phone and started playing a video, one of many I'd saved over the years. It was from a family gathering. My mother's voice, clear as she told relatives about my mental issues and how they'd sacrificed so much to help me by giving me a safe space in the basement. They watched in silence as I played clip after clip, years of their lies, their manipulation, all documented and saved. Screenshots of social media posts where they'd painted me as the troubled child while portraying Connor as the perfect son. Email threads where they discussed their concerns about my stability with relatives. "I kept everything," I said, stopping the playback. "Every lie, every manipulation, every moment you tried to make me believe I was crazy. And now you're here, asking for help from the son you locked in the basement?" My father tried a different approach. "Son, we made mistakes. We know that now, but we're about to lose the house. Connor's savings are gone. We have nowhere else to turn." "There's always the basement," I replied. "Isn't that where you put crazy people? People who make bad decisions? People who need to sort themselves out?" My mother started crying. "Please, Santiago, we were wrong. We'll do anything." "Anything?" I smiled. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. I have a finished basement in this house. It's actually quite nice, carpeted, well-lit, private bathroom. You can stay there." Their faces lit up with hope, but I continued. "There are conditions. First, you'll post a complete confession on all your social media accounts. Every lie you told about me, every manipulation, everything. Second, you'll seek therapy. I'll even pay for it. Third, you'll work legitimate jobs to pay back every person you scammed. And fourth, you'll live by the same rules you gave me. The basement is your space to sort yourselves out." Connor looked outraged. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them." My father started to argue, but my mother grabbed his arm. They huddled together, whispering urgently. After what felt like an eternity, they agreed. That was 6 months ago. They've been living in my basement since then, following my rules. Their social media confession went viral. Turns out their followers were very interested in the truth behind the perfect family facade. Connor moved in with a friend, refusing to join them in the basement. He still sends me angry texts sometimes, but I just forward them to his therapist. Gabriella thinks I'm being too generous letting them stay at all. Maybe she's right. But there's something satisfying about watching them experience what they put me through, about seeing them finally face their own lies. They're getting better, slowly. The therapy is helping, and every time I hear them talking in the basement, every time they ask permission to use the main floor, I remember that teenage boy in the basement who just wanted to be seen. Some people might call this revenge. I call it education.